Welcome back to Cornell Tech at Bloomberg. We're thrilled to have you back here. As you know, we do this every month and we speak with entrepreneurs, and it's become kind of a tradition to start our conversations here by probing whether our guest was born to be an entrepreneur. So Marc Lore, let's put you on the spot here.
Okay.
When did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I was definitely, by the way, born, no question, because I have something written in crayon when I was a little kid, 4 years old, where the teacher said, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wanted to be a farmer. And I remember bringing it home and showed my grandmother, Big Nanny, as I called her. And I showed it to her. And I was the first person in my family to go to college. We didn't have money growing up. I grew up in Staten Island, New York. And I brought it home. And she's like, oh, let me see. You want to be a farmer? No, she goes, no, I remember this. She's like, no, doctor or lawyer? And I was like, I'm like, no, farmer. She's like, no, doctor or lawyer? And I'm like, she's like, why do you want to be a farmer? And I said, oh, because they grow stuff from nothing. And that's an entrepreneur. And like, I was actually born like wanting to grow stuff from nothing.
What did you see that inspired that kind of thinking?
I mean, my dad, he, from a really early age, they had me when they were 20 years old, and my dad was literally selling vacuum cleaners door to door and selling tattoos, and so he would try to do any kind of, way to make a buck. And, entrepreneur, work his ass off, 100 hours a week, more. He was just always working, trying to, it was very entrepreneurial and trying to figure stuff out. So I guess, that's definitely part of it.
But growing something out of nothing is very different from starting a business and creating a community, creating an ecosystem. You also knew that you wanted to take risks, and that's the other component of being an entrepreneur, right? How did this show up in four-year-old Marc Lore? How did it show up in teenager Marc Lore, 20-year-old Marc Lore, and 30-year-old Marc Lore, this want to take risk?
Yeah, I mean, I was always, as a kid, always doing every sort of entrepreneurial thing you can think of, including, the traditional car wash, newspapers, recycling, like lemonade stand, like just literally doing everything to try to make money. But then when I started getting into high school, started a baseball card business, where I got my best friend, and we would buy baseball cards from the manufacturers that made cards, like Topps and things, and they'd send us boxes of cards, and we would basically all summer put them in sets and then go to trade shows and sell them, but very quickly started to like refunnel all that money back into taking bets on players as a kid, and try to corner the market on Cal Ripken Jr. as a little kid,
How old were you?
14. All the money we made, we would just pour it back into things like that. So even at a young age, was thinking about things like that,
So you eventually ended up working in finance. That was your first job out of college, right? You worked at Bankers Trust in the mid-90s, and then emerging markets, risk management at Credit Suisse in the late 90s. You went to work for a Japanese bank as well. What did you want to get out of working in finance? A lot of people that we talk to say, oh, I wanted to get this specific skill set because I knew if I'm going to start my own business, I needed to be able to know the numbers and be able to crunch the numbers. You're laughing right now.
I'm laughing because I wasn't that smart at all. When I, my parents didn't know anything about college or anything, and in high school I was all sports and
What'd you play?
Things. What's that?
What did you play?
Track and field, which is what I went up doing at university, but played every sport, soccer, football, ironically everything but basketball, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I mean, I got to university, and this was Bucknell University, and when I got there, I met with the track coach who got me in, and first day he said, I got good news and bad news. I said, okay, great, I'll take the good news. The good news is we got you in to the school. Great, what's the bad news? You're on academic probation. So the day I got there, I was on academic probation. So he said, you know, if you don't get C's, you can't stay here. This is my very first day at the school. So when
That lit a fire under you.
oh yeah, that got me motivated. I didn't get C's, let's put it that way. But when I graduated from college, I didn't have any money. There wasn't this sort of startup culture where you can go work for a startup or something like that, which I probably would have loved.
What did you study?
Finance.
You studied finance. Okay, so why did you pick finance?
I loved stocks and derivatives, and in seventh grade, I started reading books on derivatives. I just was like fascinated with the math of it. I was naturally just had math aptitude, so I didn't do well in school, but math came very easy to me. So yeah, I started getting really into that, and when I graduated from Bucknell, I thought I was going to work on the trading desk because it's Bankers Trust, and that was known for derivatives. But no, I was in the back office doing fax, trade comp firms and things, and all the Ivy League kids were on the trading desk. And again, that motivated me.
Yeah.
So I said I was going to be the first one in and the last one to leave every night, and to put the time in, and then eventually moved up very quickly. And a new field was booming at the time, financial risk management, which was much more mathematical, assessing the risk that the bank was taking in buying stocks and bonds and currencies and things. And so got into that field, and because it was new, I was very lucky. I think, and just accelerated in that field really, really quickly. And that's what led me to, being the chief risk officer at San Juan Bank. It was like.
How deliberate was this? I'm going to go into risk management because later on I think it's going to help me when I start the many businesses.
Zero was all about making money. I didn't know, I grew up, my dad just trying to make money. And I thought working was just about making money. I had no idea that there was more to it, that there was, you could be a missionary and really like, get satisfaction out of like just doing a job well and a mission behind it. I always thought working as a kid was just about making money, that's it, just money. And the entire, I call that a mercenary, which is not good or bad, but you're motivated by money or motivated by the mission. Right. Certainly motivated by money early on. That was a big lesson I learned. But yeah, I was super motivated by money. And the more money, the better I felt like I was doing. But then that came crashing down, in my late 20s.
What happened?
I just something was missing. I knew I was not building anything. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to build something. And I had saved up, a decent amount of money over those 6 years in banking. And it was I just felt like I needed to quit and become an entrepreneur. And
you needed to do something more.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was going to be. I just knew I needed to build something and like have a mission, and really like I kind of wasn't fulfilled just making the money, even though I kept making more and more money. It wasn't doing anything for me.
Right.
I thought it would, because that's what my dad taught me growing up as a mercenary. And so I just walked in my boss's office one day and just said, I'm going to quit and become an entrepreneur. And he laughed at me. He said, well, that's not how it works. You don't just come in my office and just, you're making, crazy money as a whatever it was, a 27-year-old, 28-year-old. And I said, no, I know. I really feel like I need to do this. Like, I'm not happy. Got to do this.
So what was the first thing you did when you were unemployed, you were no longer chief risk officer at San Juan Bank, and you were on your way to being an entrepreneur? What was the first thing?
Called my two best friends and said, you guys want to quit your jobs too and go do this?
Come with me.
So one was like at a prestigious law firm. The other one, I think, just finished an MBA, JD, and like they had, great opportunity there, but convinced them both to just quit and do this. And it went from being super mercenary to super missionary. It was like all about being with your best friends. I've known them since I was 10 years old, and it was just having fun and building something and doing it like the opposite of the culture that was in banking. So ruthless, hardcore, not empathetic, and I was just I think my core was very empathetic kind of personality, and I just didn't fit with banking. So when we started the first startup, we definitely like came up with a set of like values, and we were going to be like, we were going to kick ass, but also be kind and stuff. And it was really cool, like hiring people that believed in the values, believed in the mission, and like that's what like motivated me, founders, and the employees that we brought in there. And that was like transformational move in my life, where I went from being hardcore mercenary, to I would say a hardcore missionary.
Right, so you went from one extreme to the other, one end of the dial to the other.
Completely. And ironically, when I did become missionary is when the money just flowed, like it's not about missionary people. It's not that they don't like money. It's just not the primary motivator. The money just comes, but you're happier. Your happiness is derived from watching the company grow, watching happy customers, watching happy employees, happy shareholders, like the goodness of just happiness around
This virtuous circle.
Is what is really fulfilling. And if you do it well, if shareholders are happy, customers are happy, employees are happy, you're going to make a lot of money. I didn't really know that. It wasn't the purpose because I had kind of switched, but that is the lesson there.
So you eventually transitioned to founding or co-founding several businesses. You're like the textbook definition of a serial entrepreneur. There's so many to name, right? The Pit, Quidsi, Jet.com, Tornado, Mojo, Wizard. I want to fast forward a bit here and go to the most recent Wonder. That is what you're spending all of your time on. I know you have a lot of other investments. You mentioned basketball. You're one of the owners of the Minnesota Timberwolves, so yay. Before we get to that, though, I'm curious, did you know anything about coding or programming? We have a lot of engineers in our audience, and these are technical skills.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether you have any background in that or any bias towards it. Was this something that you picked up the way that you picked up math?
Yeah, I mean, because I was into math as a kid, I went to computer school for a summer, just one summer.
Computer camp.
Computer camp, yeah, computer camp. And so learned languages that are now like, not even, I don't even hear it discussed anymore in the world.
Name one of them.
Like APL, Pascal.
Anyone know these?
Fortran. Maybe that's like a big company in startups. You don't hear those languages anymore. So yeah, but I think your brain. It's not coding is a way of thinking, and my brain gravitates toward that line.
It's an approach or a mindset.
Yeah, it's a mindset. You have to. Everything has to work.
Right.
And you're building a system. It has to work, whether it be coding it or just analytically, putting together a model.
There's a path.
There's a path.
Okay, so let's talk about Wonder. I've heard it and seen it described different ways. Food truck business, a food delivery startup. What exactly is Wonder?
Yeah, so it's confusing because we did start, there was trucks in the earlier version of Wonder, but now we're really the first fully vertically integrated food delivery platform. So think like a DoorDash or Uber Eats, but we own all the restaurants on the platform. So we've got 30 restaurants and counting across every cuisine type. We've got all the fast casual restaurants that you could possibly imagine. But we've also created a new category called fast fine, which is fine dining at fast casual speed and much lower prices. And we've got we bought the rights to like Jose Andres, Bobby Flay, Marcus Samuelson, Nancy Silverton, Michael Simon, Mark Murphy, Jonathan Waxman, Esther Choi, like these great chefs. We own the restaurant that they created on our platform.
And this is separate from the restaurant that they might be fronting or heading.
Yeah, separate from that.
Okay.
Separate from that. And so, but the real moat, the real magic of Wonder is that we spent the last 5 years and hundreds of millions of dollars, literally, in culinary engineering, food science, and software engineering to be able to cook what'll be next year 40 unique restaurants out of a 2,800 square foot kitchen with only 3 pieces of electric cooking equipment, no waste, and very lightly trained and lightly skilled labor. That's really the magic, because if you can cook 40 restaurants with no gas or hoods on a common platform, you can do so much volume out of that kitchen that you have low rent. You can set a tight delivery radius. So in New York City, we won't deliver more than 6 minutes, which means you're getting food hotter, faster. We have a 30-minute order to eat time. We've got 95% on-time delivery, and the food tastes incredible. And you can order from multiple restaurants in a single delivery. So it is a big step change from current delivery, just because of the speed, the quality, multi-restaurant ordering, and we can generate extraordinary amount of volume in a small space. So we're talking like we'll have 10 locations open in the tri-state area at the end of this month, but each location is going to do somewhere between 10 and 15 million in revenue out of a size that's not much bigger than your average Chipotle, which does about 2.6 million. So it is, how do you jam an entire platform into one location and do it with really high quality?
So I can get Marcus Samuelson's restaurant food, the specific restaurant that you own, at any of your 6 locations?
Any of the 10 at the end of this month, yeah.
At 10?
Yep.
Okay.
And you can get it delivered in sub 30 minutes along with any other restaurant at the same time. And the average delivery time is only 5 minutes, so it's not sitting very long. We built all our own technology in the kitchen, and the couriers are our couriers, they're our W-2. So all the technology is brought together in a really unique way. Like if you order from 7 restaurants, all the food is sequenced, so it'll all finish cooking at the same time. So it goes immediately into a hot bag, and then we time it with the courier because we know where all our couriers are since they're our employees, so that we'll never cook something when a courier is not available. So as soon as the food's done, it goes in a hot bag, immediately gets handed to the courier, and they'll deliver it in maximum 6 minutes. So the food's getting to people very hot. And we've got a 60s net promoter score for people that know that. It's just a really, really good experience. And over the next 24 months, we're going to have 90 locations in the tri-state area. So that's kind of what the next 24 months.
Why is the tri-state area an obvious place to start? I mean, obviously it's very concentrated, and this is, the city has a very, very well-developed foodie culture.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But what did you see in Manhattan? What did you see in the greater New York City area where you were like, this is a problem and this needs to be solved?
Yeah, I mean, actually, like New York City specifically, there's a lot of food options. So I would say it's not the ideal place, but people said
interesting.
that if you can make it work in New York City, you can make it work anywhere, that it's really hard because the real estate's high and there's a lot of competition, and we're making it work here, so feel good about that. But really, where it really works is in the suburbs, because in Westfield, New Jersey, you can get access next year to 40 unique restaurants and get it delivered to your home. And there might not even be 40 restaurants, within a drive of your home out there. And so you're bringing food and our mission is to make great food more accessible. And we're bringing great food to places that don't have access. And we're bringing down the price point of great food as well. So like our Bobby filet mignon steak costs $32 on Wonder for a 10-ounce filet. It's $55 in the restaurant. So like when you look at the fast, fine food, we're able to bring the price point down because we can cook a Bobby filet steak in 6 minutes without a flame and without any labor. It's cheaper for us to cook a steak than it is to make a salad, for example. So
you mentioned 3 pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
What are those 3 pieces?
So it is an impingement oven, like it's a convection oven on steroids, has 550 degree temperature, 55-mile-an-hour winds that you can adjust.
Is it big? Is it
water
industrial
bath.
Sized or?
It's an industrial oven, hot water bath, and a ventless fryer. Those are the 3 pieces of equipment that we can cook. What'll be next year will be up to 1,000 unique menu items out of that one location.
So you could do French
like
fries, you could do sauces.
Do everything: pasta, pizza, barbecue, Chinese, Mexican, Italian, Greek, Middle Eastern, high-end, Jose Andres, Spanish tapas, like literally everything out of one location. But it's not like a traditional kitchen. It's built like a little, like a micro fulfillment center where there's a hotline. Things get all cooked in the same methodology on the 3 pieces of equipment. They go on conveyors. The conveyors go to finishing stations where it gets finished back on the conveyor and to the expo area. And we have the ability to take a restaurant out or put a new restaurant in without any investment. So we can go buy any iconic brand in the U.S. and drop it into, if we had 1,000 locations, drop it into 1,000 locations without any investment. So it's a common platform. We have 5 different size units. We have a 40 restaurant, 3,500 square feet, and the smallest is 10 restaurants in 800 square feet, which is like the size of a Subway. So there's a lot of flexibility.
I've heard you describe this as similar to what Netflix does. You look at it as content. Can you share that analogy with us in terms of Netflix owns certain content, it has exclusive deals with certain showrunners, show creators, and that's kind of what Wonder is doing as well. I mean, yes, Marcus Samuelsson has a restaurant in Harlem, but that's not what you're working with here. So you've got your own exclusive deal with him.
Yeah, exactly. We want to be able to take these amazing chefs and these iconic restaurants in the U.S. and put them into what eventually could be thousands of locations across the U.S. And we're able to bring restaurants to places that don't have access because if even like, let's take something simple, forget about even a steakhouse, like Chipotle. They can't go in every town because they need to do, let's call it $2.5 million of revenue to make the math work. In that same space as a Chipotle, we can put about 30 unique restaurants. So we only need to do $200,000 per restaurant to make the math work for us. So there's a lot of latent demand. So there's definitely $200,000 worth of demand at Chipotle, but they can't go there. There's 200,000 at Sweet Greens, they can't go there. There's 200,000 at Cabo, they can't go there. But we can go there because it's okay. We can put these fractional restaurants on the platform and give people access to food that they couldn't otherwise get. The bigger vision is that, you know, we bought Blue Apron.
When was this?
Last month, which is a meal kit company.
Yep.
And they're pretty well-known brand, but our big vision is to create a super app for mealtime. So anytime you want to eat, whether it be cooked food delivered or an oven-ready meal or meal kit, Wonder would be the go-to solution for you. And
we're a food solution company, in other words.
Yeah.
It's not just
it's not
food
just
delivery.
It's a total food solution company. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about when this business really took off, because you mentioned it started off as food trucks, and then it became something different. I was checking our reporting, and we reported that you co-founded Wonder in 2018 when you were an executive at Walmart. So you had a day job, but you didn't join the company and really get your hands in the business until, what, the middle of the pandemic?
Like really like 2 years ago.
Okay.
I was full-time executive chairman 2 years ago, and then a year ago took over as full-time CEO.
What prompted that change?
I was just, like you said, I had a bunch of startups that I had invested in and founded, and I just felt like this is the one. This is the like once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to disrupt $8 trillion market and fundamentally change how people eat and impact potentially the nutrition of the entire country and the happiness of people. Like, it just seemed like such a big idea. And I just felt like food delivery is exploding. It went from nothing to 100 billion in the last 13 years. We expect it to go to 500 billion by 2036. Just massive. And just felt like the current experience for food delivery just wasn't great. Like, personally experienced it, people experienced it, the high fees, the cold food, the late food, the bad customer service, and just felt like there's just a big opportunity to innovate in the space and use, everything that we've learned, combining the best of technology with the best of culinary into a true like next gen food tech company. And
so when it comes to technology, what did you have to challenge your engineers to create that wasn't already there in order to realize this dream, to realize the goal?
Yeah, so when we first thought about vertically integrating and buying all these restaurants, the thinking was, why do you have to cook and then deliver? Why couldn't you deliver then cook? If it's the same person driving as cooking, you're not really using any more labor. So you have to drive to the house anyway. So we built these Mercedes Sprinter vans where the driver of the Sprinter van would drive to the house and then would cook.
Park in front of someone's house.
Parked in somebody's house, but there's some incredible constraints. Had to cook great food under 10 minutes, could only use one piece of electric equipment, small space, and the driver had to cook and not make any errors. Like, it had to be that foolproof.
It's a hard person to hire.
Yeah, well, it was harder to build the processes and systems to be able to have it so that anybody can do it,
Right.
And I knew, I got to the point where I was like, I knew we had something because I spent 30 minutes, like, how does all this stuff work? How do you drive the truck? How do you cook it? 30 minutes later, I took the truck out on a night and just was doing orders, and then I knew we had something that, but if you really want to innovate, you got to set the constraints. It's hard to innovate without constraints. If we would have started in brick and mortar, there's no way we would innovate it like that because we just get more space, have more equipment.
You just keep
use
building
traditional
out and
methods.
expanding.
Yeah, it just wouldn't have been. But the magic of the model is that we learned how to cook food on a common platform fast with very lightly trained labor. And that was sort of the unlock, because then that allowed us to put 40 restaurants into a very small 2,800 square foot kitchen.
I'm intrigued by this idea of lightly trained labor. What does that actually mean in practice?
Lightly trained meaning you could, without any training, like walk into a Wonder Kitchen and you just look at the screen, because we built all the tech, and it just says, go to refrigerator A1, get the filet steak. So you go to A1, you pull it, there's the filet steak, you get it, and put it in oven B2 left. You go to the oven B2, open it up, put it in the left, close it. And then the system tells you when to take it out. So
You're following directions.
yeah, you're following directions. It's not, you're not having to know how to, you don't have to know how to cook. It's trying to make it operate more like a micro fulfillment center in e-commerce almost. You know, like how do you just systematize it? It's almost like just picking and put away, you know? How do you do it, but still keep the quality as if you're in a fine dining restaurant. And I think that's what the magic is, that the food quality matches what you'd get in a fine dining restaurant. You're just getting it fast and hot to your door at a price that restaurants wouldn't be able to offer.
So the steak is already marinated, it's already pretty much kind of halfway there?
Yeah, it's like what we call par cooked, if any foodies out there understand what that means. But we'll buy the raw steak, and at a big food manufacturing facility far from these locations, we will submerge the raw steak in 135-degree water for 112 minutes, partially cook it, and we take it out and blast chill it, never freeze it, nothing's ever frozen. But we stop it from cooking, then we put it in packaging where we modify the atmosphere, we take out take out the oxygen, add CO2 and nitrogen. That'll preserve that steak now for 13 days in the refrigerator. So now it's turned into sort of a commodity. It gets sent to the location, into the refrigerator, until somebody orders it. And we get replenished every day, so there's no waste, because you just have to churn it in 13 days. And yeah, some of the kitchen design that we're working on now for the end of 2025 is like using AI and robotics. It takes it to a whole other level, where we can put the same 40 restaurants in half the square feet. It's very automated, and it'll utilize about half the labor. So
And that's already in process,
yeah,
right?
it's already in process. We're continuing to invest heavily in R&D and technology to see what's possible. Like our flywheel is, the more restaurants we can get into that location in the same space, the lower our rent is as a percentage of revenue, the tighter we can set the delivery radius, which means the hotter food, the faster food. And by the way, faster means cheaper. In e-commerce, delivering faster is more expensive. In food delivery, because you're cooking the food right there, faster delivery means it costs you less to deliver.
Does it
because
cost
they're
the customer
going less
less?
distance. Yeah.
And
I mean,
so the customer will
ultimately,
see it.
we only charge $1.99 for delivery across all the restaurants in one, but we're able to charge lower prices because we make more money.
So you mentioned that you took this on full time 2 years ago. That puts us at 2021 or so, late 2021. That was a very specific period of time. It was in the middle of the pandemic. People were reluctant to go out, or they had gotten used to staying in and eating in front of Netflix or HBO. How did you look past that moment, the specific context of the pandemic, to plan ahead for the behaviors, the changes, the needs that the business would serve once things did return to normal?
Yeah, I think the food delivery had been on a trajectory, and then with COVID, it sort of kinked up.
Yep.
But
you knew that it wouldn't last.
Right. Our best estimate was it was going to get back on that accelerated trend, and it did. That's exactly what happened. But it did come down. Fortunately, we were so small that it didn't really matter. But I think it probably accelerated things even a little bit more, coming back down on trend than it would have. But yeah, I think we all knew it wasn't going to continue. That when restaurants opened, people would not be ordering in as much.
Who was the first chef that you signed?
First chef, Bobby Flay was right up in the front, and Mark Murphy. I think those were the the two first chefs.
And how did that come about? You pitched them the idea, or
Yeah,
you knew them from another context?
No, pitched them. Bobby Flay came, somehow got him there. I knew Bobby Flay from a different part of my life, and he came in and sat down and tried the steak, and he's like, "Wow, I feel like I'm in my restaurant. This is great." And then he was convinced it was cooked on an open flame because it was seared on both sides, and we said no. It wasn't. It was just cooked in an oven, and he didn't believe it. We had to show him, and then after we showed him, he was really impressed with the technology. He invested. He became an advisor. He's been one of our biggest fans now and advocates. But it started with proving it early on. I mean, some of the things that we do now. I mean, the steak back then cooked in 12 minutes. You had to flip it. Now we can cook 12 steaks in 6 minutes without flipping it. We can cook pasta in the oven without any water, sautéed. We can cook a pizza in 88 seconds. Like, we've engineered now over 600 different items across every cuisine.
And it tastes the same as it would in a restaurant.
Chinese food without a wok. I mean, it's some really cool things. What's that? Yeah, you're not. If you come and try the food, you won't.
What can you not do? Can you do sushi?
Right. Sushi. We have a sushi restaurant, but I would say there's a little bit on food science and how we preserve the fish, but there's nothing on the obviously cooking of it.
It's assembling.
Yeah, it's assembling. So there's some stuff that we do there that's kind of cool, but nothing compares to how we engineer like proteins and pastas and pizza and things like that. Nestle just recently invested $100 million in the company to get access to our pizza and pasta formulation, because I think there's real IP there. But we've had 230 engineers working on this for 5 years on just like focused with those constraints, how do you match the quality, but cook it in sub 6 minutes without any hoods, no gas, no flames, nothing like that.
So you were a finance major, you were not a food science major, you didn't have any background in nutrition or anything like that. How did you get up to speed in all of this? Who did you lean on for this? I mean, because your job is as much about being a leader and recruiting the best talent around you.
Well, you just said that's what it is. It is knowing what you don't know and building first the culture, the foundation. I think it's the most important thing as a startup founder. The culture, set the vision, strategy, and the culture so that you could attract, retain, and get the best out of the best people in the world. And you have to empower them, set up a culture which is really empowering. And empowering, I mean, trust them, be transparent with information. Our values are trust, transparency, and fairness. I believe if you do those things really well, people feel empowered, they'll give you the best they've got. And you can't second guess people, especially when it comes to things that are out of your control. So you have to...
That they know more of than you do.
Yeah, you have to make sure you get the very best people, and you need to trust them. And that's where the magic happens. When you bring in the very best people and they give you the very best that they've got because they feel motivated, and trust and transparency builds loyalty, and that's sort of that's the magic. If you kind of get too much, you question too many things,
or go micromanaging.
You micromanage or question, they get demotivated, people, I find, and then you will never get what you
hope to achieve.
Yeah.
So at the same time, you do offer a DoorDash-like service, or at least at one point you did. I don't know if you still do, where people use your app to order food from other restaurants. Is that still something that's available?
No. That was with the trucks.
Okay, that was back in the truck days. Got it.
Days.
Why did you decide to drop that part of the business?
I think with just the demand that we're seeing first of all, we have a lot more restaurants now than we had back in the truck days. And we're finding new ways to add more restaurants in the same space. We just have so many restaurants on the platform that we haven't really focused on. I mean, it's something that could potentially come down the road, but it's not something we've really focused on.
So one thing about the food preparation industry is that restaurant kitchens, they have to pass health and safety inspections. They're subject to all kinds of regulations. Is that something that you need to deal with as well?
Yeah, the health department comes in, we get that letter A, we got to get that A. So yeah, we deal with that. It's easier when you don't have raw proteins in these locations, you're not chopping vegetables. It's just a lot easier. The fact that everything's partially cooked at a big facility. So that facility is the one point of failure. But if you have thousands,
Where's that facility?
that's in New Jersey.
And it's just one facility or
Two.
two?
Two.
Okay,
One in Cranford and one in Newark.
got it. And as you expand,
We would merge them together and build a campus in eastern Pennsylvania. So we want one campus to service the entire Northeast so that you're buying in full truckload, sourcing product, sending product out in full truckload, sort of hub and spoke model, similar to the way Walmart would do it. And then it would go to a distribution center, like one might be in Boston, one might be in DC, one might be in New York. The food would get sorted and then sent out to the locations. So it has a lot of similarities to e-commerce in that way, because once you partially cook the food and get it into the modified atmospheric packaging, it's somewhat of a commodity for 6 to 13 days. Now it does expire, but it's long enough to move it and sell it.
right.
So it's not that dissimilar to fresh food in a grocery store.
So one thing I've been curious about is Travis Kalanick, the Uber co-founder. He started Cloud Kitchens, this ghost kitchen concept, which was a delivery of a network of delivery and pickup-only kitchens. And in just seeing what he's been up to, I noticed that he's really been struggling. He's had to lay off workers. He's had to shut warehouse locations. When you look at comparisons made between Cloud Kitchens and what you're doing, where are the points where there's similarities?
I mean, the only similarity is he's more, it's a real estate play where he's buying real estate at good prices, carving it up, and then building out kitchens so that people can rent space, like restaurants can rent it, and then connect them to DoorDash, Uber Eats to sell it and deliver it. So he's kind of
He's managing real estate.
He's managing real estate and also arbing the real estate, because maybe you pay $100 a square foot, but then you make these kitchens and charge $200 a square foot. So he's filling out a way to monetize the real estate and get more value out of it by creating these things. So restaurants are leasing the space, they are cooking food, and it is being delivered. But that model looks very similar to the traditional model of food delivery, where a restaurant cooks the food and DoorDash sells it and delivers it. Like that's that model. So that's very different from what we're doing, because we're completely vertically integrated. So we own the restaurants, we own the delivery, we own the app, we sell the food to our own app. And
You're buying the ingredients and you're...
yeah, and also we're able to locate very close to the customer and set a tight delivery radius, so we're doing it faster, hotter. So like all the benefits we have over traditional food delivery, we have the same benefits over the players that are in his kitchens, but his model is smart. Like, I mean, there's a lot of demand for people to want to rent space to use DoorDash and Uber Eats to deliver food, and I think he's got a big opportunity there to leverage that space. But we're not competing. We're
It's a separate approach.
Yeah, it's a separate approach.
What's the fundraising environment like now? I mean, as you look to expand, you talked about 10 locations. At some point, you'll get beyond Metro New York City as well. Given that interest rates have gone up and are not necessarily going to come down anytime soon, money's a lot more expensive than it used to be. Venture capital firms are no longer throwing money at everyone. Have you had to raise money, and what? I mean, I know you got $100 million from Nestle, but what does it look like out there?
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I've raised money back in 2001, 2008, like really hard times. 2015 was kind of shaky. This is sort of, if 10's the hardest, this is like right now we're at a 6.5 or 7 out of 10. So it's definitely harder than average, but it's not a 9 or 10. Like there's still people investing. I think the valuations have come in a lot, so that has changed. The valuations have come in, and there's a higher bar. But I find that is great. That for us, that is a part of our moat, because if this was the heyday of like money being thrown, there'd be 3 startups like knocking us off around the country. Much harder to get funded now. So I feel like if we can get funded, we can continue to extend, the 5 years of culinary engineering head start that we've got.
So you mentioned Nestle, $100 million investment. Tell me a little bit more about what they want to get out of it, because it's also part of your, right now you cater to consumers, you cater to the end user, but this is as much about catering to businesses as well.
Yeah, so the Nestle relationship, we have a B2B business where we've built these ovens that have this technology. We've got the food, and so we're selling the ovens and food white label, not with branding, to stadiums, arenas, hospitals, hotels, airport lounges. And Nestle is a similar professional business where they sell to those same types of customers. And they are going to make pizza, pasta in their manufacturing facility according to our formulation. They're going to pay us a royalty and sell it to their B2B customers, and then we're going to use their manufacturing capacity to then sell to our B2B customers. So that's like a separate line of business. It's sort of, I call it like our version of AWS, in the sense that we've built this technology and now we're just leveraging it, in a B2B way.
When was the last time you cooked something for yourself?
It's been a long time. I went to fun fact. I did go to culinary school for an intensive month when I was younger, and it was every day, all day for a month. And I found that
before any of this.
Before any of this, it was a long time ago.
Okay.
And thought found it really fascinating. I always thought it's very artistic, but there's also a lot of math involved in it, and how you do it. So I thought that was cool. But no, I don't have time to.
You don't need to. I mean, you have it.
Yeah.
All the restaurants at your fingertips. Before we open things up to the audience, I do want to go through kind of a speed round, just an overall round of questions where we can draw upon your expertise and your experience in all the other companies you started. What was your biggest mistake, or what is your biggest mistake when it comes to your entrepreneurial journey?
I think I always give this advice to people coming out of school. I had it upside down. I thought, the most important thing was, when you got a job out of school, was how much money do you make? Then it was the job. Then it was the company. Then it was the person you work for. Completely upside down. Like, now I realize, like, it's all about who you work for. When you're young and you're coming out of school, you learn values, leadership. There's so many lessons that you learn from the individual that I got really lucky in that the people I worked for, I had no idea that they taught me the lessons that they did. And had I not worked for them, I know some people out there that, wow, I would have been gone a very different direction.
Right.
And how to be a leader and how to be a good, learn good values and behaviors, and traits and things. So I would say that, yeah, it's really important who you work for. I think money's last. I had money first. Money's last, especially when you first graduate. The money will come. You're in learning mode, and so I would say that. Just pick, who do you want to work for?
It's kind of how VCs pick who they want to invest in. It's based on the person as opposed to the idea. The idea can always change, right? It can always be tweaked, but the person is the one factor, the X factor. What's been your most challenging investment? And I say that really broadly, like company to run, or a company that you started, or...
I think, with Quidsi, diapers.com, I think the most challenging time was when Amazon cut the price of diapers by 30%.
Yeah, that's pretty difficult.
Yeah, and this was at a time, by the way, like, diapers were a loss leader, and like, if you cut the price by 1 or 2%, that was really big, because you were already losing money. To cut it 30% was insane.
That's a baller move.
And they were losing, $100 million or more a year, like, on just diapers.
Yeah.
But it slowed us down. We're still growing through it, which is why they bought us. But it could have gone a different way. But the hardest investment was going out and trying to raise money, and when people would say, but Amazon just cut the prices 30%, they're coming after you. What's your answer? Good point. We'll sell to them. I was like,
at some point you're like,
no, there was really no answer.
A behemoth.
It's just, yeah. At that point.
I think you might have stolen my next question, which is what's the hardest pitch you had to make?
No, that wasn't the hardest pitch.
No?
No, that pitch wasn't as hard as Jet.com, where we were burning $40 million a month, and running out of cash. That was a tough pitch.
How did you frame it?
How did I frame it? We did have growth on our side, so We had got to close to $1 billion in revenue in 10 months from starting. So it was a rocket ship. But we were burning a lot of money to do it. And it was a big valuation very quickly. And we had negative gross margins because we weren't at scale. And it was, I think with all these raises, it is not afraid to be really transparent and
Be upfront.
break down barriers on what exactly are you concerned about? Like what exactly about the burn is concerning? Here's how we're putting money to use. Here's the CAC. Here's the LTV. Here's the payback. Here's what, there's a lot of education that has to come into play, but I still think also a lot of luck as well. Anytime you're raising, there's just, you could make your own luck, but there's just luck.
Okay, so let's go there. Share a time when luck made a meaningful difference in something that you did. We could start with good luck.
How about this? This is just not even business, but it was super lucky that Stephen Cohen outbid me and A-Rod for the Mets. Super lucky, like crazy lucky, because we were obsessed, both New Yorkers. We wanted that team really badly, and we had the winning bid. And
you were almost there.
we were like there, and
but this is New York. You can't count on someone.
Yeah, no, and for reasons I'm not going to get into, the last minute we lost it to Steve Cohen, and
were you upset at the time?
So upset. It was like a childhood dream growing up in New York. I was born and raised, New Yorker, like big sports fan, and we were kind of depressed. And then 6 months later, we got this call from the Minnesota Timberwolves owner, and we decided, and that did work out. But it turns out like we would have probably gone bankrupt had we bought the Mets, like given how much that team is burning, and the Timberwolves and basketball is just exploding around the world, and it's so much better.
So much a better investment.
So much better. But literally, it was just luck because we're like this close that we could have been sunk. So sometimes you just get lucky with things that don't happen as opposed to things that do. That was very lucky.
Most important lesson you learned the hard way, Marc?
Lesson learned the hard way. I think it's just entrepreneurship is so freaking hard. I say it's like eating glass every day. You're just chewing on it and you're just hoping you don't get cut on the way down through you. And people who are entrepreneurs know what I'm talking about, but it is so hard to juggle everything.
But it's fun while you're doing it, or it's fun after the fact? Or fun at night when you...
You gotta have something, you gotta have a problem, I think. I have a problem. You can't, there's no way a normal person would wanna subject themselves to eating glass every day, which is really, especially, I have plenty of money. I don't need to be eating glass right now, but I am.
But yet you choose to, yeah.
I'm eating it, yeah. I think, but I'm kind of getting off. The most biggest lesson, I think, was really the hard lesson about you only have a certain amount of time in the day, and being ruthless about how you prioritize your time, and not creating, especially as an entrepreneur, creating complexity in your life. How do you simplify life? So I think, when you have money, you tend to add assets and do things and stuff. I really learned the hard way, no, simple is you're much happier when things are simple. I have one home, I have one car, I'm just really, really simple now.
You don't want to overcomplicate
Yeah,
things.
I'm so much happier. Even, I don't have a family office. I'm trying to simplify everything so I can focus on wonder. And I realize that's my happy place. It's simple. And I think a lot of people, including myself before, was create anxiety and stress from things that you really won't make you happy in the end.
Ultimately don't matter.
Yeah, don't matter.
All right, let's open things up to the audience. We've got some mics. This gentleman in the front raised his hand immediately, so let's go straight to him.
Scarlet, Marc, thank you so much for your time. My name is Jacob Solano. So I had a quick question. So early on in your career, you invested, I believe, $390,000 to jumpstart your career. But that was when you were late 20s. So going back in time, would you give 23-year-old Mark some advice to take that entrepreneurial leap then and not have the experience, not have the capital to jumpstart your career?
Yeah, it's funny. So just to back, so my first startup in late 20s, I invested $390,000 in my first startup myself, and investor, I'm pitching, and he said, "Wow, this sounds like a great idea. It sounds like you're all in. I see you invested here. I just have one question. Why did you invest $390,000 and not $400,000?" And I said, "Oh, because that's all I was able to save during my career in banking." He said, "Wait, you emptied out your bank account to invest in this company? That is the craziest thing I've ever heard, but you're not going to fail, are you?" Like, "No, I can't. I have a baby. I can't fail now." So that triggered, like, something clicked, and he put money in, and then he introduced me to someone, because I didn't know anyone with money. That person he told the story to, they invested, then they told the story, and the story got out, and basically had 60 angel investors that all really stemmed from the fact that I was all in on this thing. They liked the idea, the story, and everything, but the all-in thing was so valuable. And part of going all in, and I still tend to do this, is it lights a fire under your ass that is so hot that you have to give the best you've got, otherwise, you're done, right? It's like you put yourself in a position where you can't fail, and I think that's how you get the very best that you've got inside you, and you'll find a gear, I call it sixth gear, that you didn't even know you had when you have that.
You'll surprise yourself.
Yeah, when you have that on the line.
We have someone who has a follow-up question, I believe, to that.
Hello. No, I have a separate question and a follow-up on the talk. Thank you, Mark, for all the insight. Currently, mercenary, also an aspiring missionary. You mentioned a lot of the things that resonated with me is that you set a culture and you set the vision for your team, and that's the most important part. Can you give us some pointers as to how do you do it at a high level, please? Thank you.
Yeah. I created a framework over time that I call VCP, Vision Capital People. And I think it's really important, if you're starting a company or even if you're in a company, to really spend the time to get VCP right. And under vision, it would really be like getting down on paper, what is the vision? What exactly do you want to become in 10, 15, 20 years? What is the strategy? What is the way you're going to differentiate? And how are you going to get to that vision in a unique way? And get it down on paper. And then every week with your team, you go through it over and over and over again to work out all the nuances until you're crystal clear. When everyone knows the vision and strategy in the company really clearly, things move so much faster, and you don't need it as to micromanage, because people get it, and then you set the right organizational structure, you get the right metrics in place, you set up the organizational structure so that the most important metrics are owned by single individuals, so that they have full accountability and they're empowered. So that's like on the capital side, it's coming up with a clear capital plan of how you're going to raise money now and in the future, and what you need to accomplish with each round to get to the next valuation, get the next pocket of capital, and there's a whole other things under there. And then under the people side, it's all about building the right culture, having a mission statement. What's your North Star? What do you stand for? What are your values as a company? I talked about trust, transparency, and fairness. And what are the behaviors and traits that you look for in people you hire? And interview against it, performance manage it against it. It's really important you know the kind of culture you want to create. What do you want the company to stand for values-wise? And then what are the types of people that you want to bring into the organization? And don't let anyone else in. Let that be, just an absolute, filter for you.
We have time for one more question because I took so long with all my questions. This gentleman back here.
Hey, Mark. My name is Rumi. I am the CEO of Madeline & Co. Speaking of strategies, the first AI strategy-assisted platform. And I have a lot of questions for you, but I'm just going to go with one of them.
Okay.
So in the process of strategizing Wonder, could you share some of the potential pitfalls or challenges you anticipated that might have led to failure, and how did you address them?
Yeah, I think This is something about risk management. I think is really important and applies in entrepreneurship, applies in business, applies in life. But people overestimate the risk of change and underestimate the risk of the status quo. And so a perfect example I'll tell you is that we had this truck business, which was doing well. I wasn't the CEO at the time. Was doing well by all accounts. It was growing. It was unit economic positive, and at the same time, we had tested a brick and mortar, and the brick and mortar seemed to have a very similar customer experience, but much better return on capital, and it was a much more scalable model. So I think I would argue at the time, better model than the trucks. But how do you go into a board, talk to investors, talk to employees, and say, who think and call it, hey, you're in the food truck business. We weren't really, because that was just a median. It was really about culinary engineering and technology. But we have 450 trucks on the road, and we are going to stop the trucks, take the revenue to zero, sell the trucks, take a loss on the trucks, and then do this new brick and mortar thing that looks good, but we have 30 days of data on. Like, how do you make that change and justify it? And how do you go into the board and tell them that this is what you've decided?
How do you sell that idea? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I mean is, like, now if I ask any employee, any board member, any investor 12 months forward, smart decision or not, they'll tell me, why didn't you make it earlier? Why do you wait so long? That's sort of the mentality, right? So you have to see it to believe it, sort of thing. But as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to make the hard decisions, and you have to recognize the risk is not in change, the risk is in not changing. And I saw that as the big risk. If we don't change, that's risky.
Change or die.
Yeah, I mean, just that was risky.
Yeah.
And I felt changing to this new model was less risky because I knew the status quo was risky. But I just find that people have a really hard time with that, and it's a requirement for being an entrepreneur. You have to take in all available information every day and not be afraid to take new information and pivot, move, change, adapt, and not worry about the risk of change. Worry about the risk of not changing.
Goes back to that idea that we started with, which is as much as you wanted to start your own businesses, you had an appetite for risk as well. That was always kind of there.